Welcome to the show. Tonight, the Greens leader today proves is either a liar or too stupid to be in Parliament. How can anyone with sense vote for him? Wait till you hear what he said. In fact, how can anyone vote for any of the Greens when one of its senators today said she's going to keep chanting for the river to the sea, which is a chant actually endorsed by Hamas terrorist leaders. But what does she care? Plus, Fighting Back at Last moves in one parliament today to stop non-Aboriginal Australians from being locked out of our most beautiful tourism spots for so-called cultural reasons.
Good morning, Australia, from the summit of Mount Warning.
Also tonight, an anti-Israel protester proves that we are looking at barbarians here by urinating in the office of an academic with Jewish background. Disgusting. And why are so many Australian novels so terrible? Amazing statistics about the kind of people who publish books and write them might explain a lot. Plus my Whiskey and Book of the Week, and of course Barnaby Joyce. But first, you know, I'm getting a real sense of drift now from this Albanese government. No, it's worse than drift. It's more like headless chickens, a rabble, heading for a cliff, whatever metaphor you'd like. Now, if I were a Labor MP, I'd panic. I mean, just today, 3 more examples, all of them telling you there's no leadership, there's no direction. Something's broken. 3 examples. And I'll leave the most telling one to last. The government finally realising its net zero target is a disaster and we're running out of power and, oh my God, panic. But to number 1, the Prime Minister today refused yet again to call out China for its unprovoked and deliberate attack on one of our Navy helicopters while the chopper was in international waters. A Chinese jet fighter dropping flares above it and in front of it. Anthony Albanese again refused to call this an attack. He again called it just an incident. And he again made out it was just some sloppy work by a Chinese pilot. Unprofessional, he keeps calling it, when in fact it was a very deliberate and very professional act of aggression.
This action by China was unprofessional and unacceptable. We've made that very, very clear.
I just don't get Albanese's word games here. I mean, does he think the rest of us are now going to think, oh, that's okay. Oh, it's just an incident. Oh, no biggie. And it's just a little lack of professionalism by China's pilots. I mean, we know that's not true, and it just makes Albanese look like a fool, and worse, weak, clueless. In fact, I should point out, our Prime Minister still won't pick up the phone to China's dictator and say, what the hell are you up to? And then the second thing today, another bad day for Labor. The spending of money by this government. I mean, no wonder inflation is not coming down like it should. But the spending today was even worse because it rewarded the incompetence of the worst government by far in Australia, which is still Victoria's Labor government, not the federal one. Now, I warned a couple of nights ago that the rest of Australia would be forced to bail out Victoria with a net debt that's now headed to $190 billion, would you believe? More than the debt of New South Wales, Queensland and Tasmania combined. But you know what I didn't realise? That part of that bailout would come just 2 days later, today. An extra $3.5 billion of your money announced by Albanese for just one Victorian road project, the North East Link, bringing now Anthony Albanese's handouts for that road to $5 billion.
We believe this $5 billion is an appropriate contribution by the Commonwealth to what is a vital nation-building project.
Now, I said this was rewarding failure or maybe incompetence really, because 5 years ago, Victoria's Transport Minister, Jacinta Allen, now the Premier, she was standing there next to Albanese, put out a press release saying, don't worry, we've got this. Our budget delivers every single cent needed to build North East Link, which turned out to be another Labor lie, another Labor disaster. In fact, Premier Allen last December admitted this one road project alone had blown out, in fact, by $10 billion. And she's now rattling the can. And along comes Albanese, rushing in to rescue his socialist left ally with billions from Australians who aren't Victorians but are now on the hook for the Victorian government's incompetence. A blowout, which Albanese today simply brushed off.
Infrastructure is costing more. It's costing more because of, and that is right around the nation. The supply chain issues that came arising out of the long tail of COVID has had a major impact.
The two incompetents sitting there. If they were in business, they'd be fired. But to the third and biggest sign today of a government that's lost the plot. This government today realised, its big promise to help stop global warming by cutting Australia's emissions to zero net by 2050 was in fact heading us all to disaster. Now, it's no surprise to you and I, of course, because how often have we been talking about this target not just being impossible, but bound to smash the economy. I mean, the cost of it and the shortages already of electricity and gas. You know, your power bills through the roof. In fact, electricity prices are so terrible already that top food companies are this week warning that power prices and wage rises too are now making it too hard for manufacturers to stay in Australia. And already we've seen some pack up. I mean, God, future made in Australia, my foot. Well, today the government said, actually we do really need to get more gas supplies. So forget banning fossil fuels. We've got a plan because we need gas for many years, in fact, decades to come. And we have this new plan to do it.
There has to be a discussion and an assessment of how all energy sources fit within that journey to net zero by 2050.
Now, Albanese repeated that today, not very enthusiastically, I must say. And in fact, he was standing right next to that Labor Premier, Victoria's, of a government that actually banned all gas exploration in the state for a decade and which still bans fracking.
We support net zero. Gas and its firming capacity is a part of assisting with that pathway.
Okay, all very well. Now, more gas, except for this. Labor is saying it wants more gas, but saying only just for now, net zero, we've got to get rid of fossil fuels. Now, you tell me which company wants to risk, look, it's tens, sometimes hundreds of billions of dollars of investment on a promise of a business just for now. You've got to be kidding. And don't forget, this is a government that meanwhile gives millions of dollars to green activist groups to stop or delay huge gas projects in our courts. We've seen that in Western Australia, we've seen that in the Northern Territory. People say, Rainbow Serpent, activist lawyers funded by Labor, holds a project up in the court. And there's another thing. Meanwhile, we have got banks actively sabotaging gas development. The ANZ, for instance, this week announced it's no longer going to lend money to open new coal or gas fields, nor will other banks. Global warming, banks of a conscience, get off our back, don't invade our meeting, don't make our life hell. These banks are saboteurs of Australia's future. So look, while Labor keeps feeding the global warming scare, while it keeps funding green lawyers to stop gas projects, while it still subsidises green power instead to drive fossil fuels out of business, we're still headed to an energy crisis. This may be now a government that's speaking from both sides of its mouth on this great green cause. Yes, net zero, but please, more gas. What jokers. I mean, really, chasing their own tails, and not just on this issue. Immigration, we haven't even talked about that. While Australians get poorer and poorer, and Australia heads for the cliffs. But to the Greens, is there a more disgusting and vandalistic and deliberately ignorant political party in this country? Two examples today. Here's Greens leader Adam Band acting outraged that the Albanese government has been forced to admit a fact: we need more gas to keep on the lights.
Labor is now threatening Australian lives and livelihoods by backing coal and gas out past 2050 and fast-tracking climate collapse.
Now, how stupid exactly do you have to be to say that? You know, Australia is too small to do anything that will make any measurable change to the temperature and therefore to the climate. The former chief scientist admitted just that, right? So Australians won't die because of what Albanese said. The climate won't collapse. I mean, what does a climate collapse even look like? This is Adam Bandt pushing either a great lie or advertising his invincible stupidity. He's not fit to be in Parliament. To think that, 13% of Australians vote for him? What a national scandal. But to the second example today, Green Senator Dorinda Cox, actually boasting that she chanted that anti-Israel slogan we've talked about quite often, from the river to the sea, Palestine will be free, which in fact means no Israel.
Well, I do support and have participated in the change from the river to the sea. This is something that I think supporters of Palestine are very clear about. And in fact, this is sufficient in the way that we have this conversation. It's grounded in peace and freedom.
Is she really that ignorant or just pretending to be? Either way, it's a terrible look. I mean, grounded in peace and freedom, that slogan, no, Senator Cox, it's grounded in genocide. Now, Ismail Mashal, don't take it from me, take it from Ismail Mashal, the leader of Hamas abroad. He actually spelled it out for you, for the Greens, for the students who will mindlessly chatter that slogan from the river to the sea. He said it's a slogan that does mean wiping out Israel. And Hamas will settle for nothing else but the destruction of Israel. It doesn't want these two states, Israel and Palestine. It wants just one, Palestine. Here he is.
المسألة الأولى نحن لا نقبل حل الدولتين خاصة بعد 7 أكتوبر. أظن تجدد الحلم والأمل فلسطين من البحر إلى النهر من الشمال إلى الجنوب وهذا حتى كما قلت لك أصبح شعار في الولايات المتحدة وفي العواصم الغربية.
The Hamas leader is actually grateful to people like this Green Senator Dorinda Cox chanting their slogan from the river to the sea. Now, when she was reminded of what that Hamas leader has said in the past by Sky's Tom Connell today, she just did the I don't know, don't want to know routine.
Well, look, I'm not an expert on Middle Eastern history.
How reckless is that? I mean, this is Greens for you. Totally sure of themselves, totally ignorant. Either that or they're totally liars. Joining me every Thursday is the Nationals front bencher Barnaby Joyce, the former Deputy Prime Minister. Barnaby Joyce, thanks for your time. Look, the Greens there, your response?
Well, from the river, that would be the Jordan River, I presume. To the sea, that would be the Mediterranean Sea, I presume. And if that means that Hamas is running that, backed by Iran, that would be, you would have a Holocaust. It would be the end of the Jewish people in that part of the world. They would either have to leave, or I presume, as you would believe, if Hamas running it, they would be killed. Now, if the Greens want to support that idea, then my question is to so many others, why do you support the Greens? Why do you endorse their views? Why do you stand beside them? We, for all what the people find the flaws in Israel, it's a democracy. It's transparent, and the war that's happening was not started by them. It was started by a terrorist organisation called Hamas, and Hamas wants to wipe Israel out from the Jordan River, the Mediterranean Sea, and between those two items lies Israel. There will be no Israel.
Look, I'm just stunned that a Greens senator can say such things and pretend such ignorance. I mean, I'm being kind to her by saying she pretends to be that ignorant, because I can't believe she seriously is that ignorant. I won't offend her by saying that.
She thinks she's a big hit around, certain sections of the arts, philosophy and politics sections of certain universities. Be hanging around pool tables and,
I know.
And saying how
the adults have got to make a stand, Barnaby.
Yeah, so, I mean,
but the adults have got to make a stand.
We've got to, people getting
Now,
sucked into
Barnaby,
some
what about the other bit?
Pardon?
But what about the other bit, Barnaby Joyce, about the government saying, oh, look, we still believe in net zero, but could someone please find more gas for us? What did you make of that?
This is like the platitudes that drive Peter Pan power. All of a sudden, they realise that the swindle factories, wind farms, and the solar factories and the transmission lines are a swindle. They're not going to do it. And rather than admitting it, they're going to say, oh, yes, we need more gas. And we do. And if Victoria doesn't want gas, they should just, I don't know, ban it, because their economy is going so well down there. They can just drive what's left of their economy into the dirt, like we're driving the nation's economy into the dirt. And it's really your listeners and other people have to say, the swindle's up, we're over it. We're going to have a rational view on how we make our nation as strong as possible, as quickly as possible, because up above us, we've got China breathing down our neck. And our biggest issue, our biggest threat is not climate change, okay? Everything we do in Australia is going to have no effect. It's a platitude. It's been part of the process. But what we are doing very successfully is destroying our economy, socialising private assets, and driving people who are poor into poverty. That's what you're doing. If you're supporting it, you are very successful because you are achieving your goal. You're driving poor people into poverty and driving our economy into the dirt.
Well, Barnaby, please end on a happier note. Tell us a lot about your love affair with beef. I mean, you're one of the, it seems like half of Parliament has emptied into the beef week at Rockhampton.
I suppose I am a beef producer. My family have been beef producers for generations. And it's great to be here because this is a noble cause. The point of this is not swindling people by finding their weaknesses or an addiction. We're feeding people. It's creating food. It's food on the plate. That's a great moral outcome. And we see people from all around Australia here. And it's not just people walking around in the cow manure. It's sing the genetics, sing the science. We've got bands on tonight, we've got dinners on. It's a great thing. Joe Peterson started it in 1988. Just goes to show you, when you invest where you make money, you make more money. But if you invest where you lose money, you go broke. So this is a good example of investing where our nation actually makes money.
Well, don't forget the Albanese government's coming for the farmers too with their global warming nonsense. So spread the word. Barnaby Joyce, thank you so much indeed for your time. But there was actually more good news than Beef Week today. A revolt against this racist dividing of Australia so that non-Aborigines can't walk on some of the most beautiful parts of our country. Now, we've already had Aboriginal groups decide, or their white advisors, I'd suspect quite often, decide to ban climbing on Uluru, which has hurt tourism numbers there terribly. They've banned visiting and swimming in the lovely Gunlom Falls in Kakadu. They've banned climbing on parts of Victoria's Grampians. The South Australian government is even considering banning non-Aborigines from recreationally using Australia's biggest lake, Lake Eyre, a magnet for wildlife when it fills. And now the New South Wales government has also banned, of course, or banned now for 4 years, climbing on Mount Warning because of so-called secret men's business. It supposedly makes it unsafe. Although Mark Hendricks, a geologist, has been on this show, he's fought that ban and climbed that mountain on Australia Day with friends. Here he is.
Good morning, Australia, from the summit of Mount Warning. We're here on Australia Day of all days. Hey. Group of people have climbed up here to catch the first sunrise on Australia Day 2024. And despite all the angst we've gone through, all this nonsense, all this division, we're here together with an elder from the Rapwal people, Sturt Boyd. He's here with us together, and we're with him on his permission to be up here to enjoy this wonderful day together. And that's what Australia Day should be.
What a magnificent view. Now, a petition organised by Hendricks and New South Wales MP John Rhetoric of the Libertarian Party to reopen Mount Warning to all races has been put to Parliament. And John Rhetoric joins me now. John, great to see you again. What has happened with your petition?
Okay, well, the rules of the New South Wales Parliament are if we can get 10,000 residents of New South Wales to sign the petition, then the Parliament has to debate that subject. And we exceeded the 10,000, which we're very pleased with. And I think your show helped with that when you interviewed Mark Hendricks. So we had the debate today. So I got to give a 10-minute speech, and then one of the ministers from the Labor government has to reply. And the minister that replied was the Minister for the Environment, the Leader of the government, Penny Sharp. Now, look, I was hoping, Andrew, that this today we could have sort of seen light at the end of the tunnel. This has been going on since the year 2000. This is a mess created by the previous Liberal national government. Labor, I think, they keep telling me that they want a resolution, but we heard nothing today, Andrew, except for waffle. They should have, bitten the bullet. So, you know what? The town that's just nearby, Andrew, Murwillumbah, has had a history of voting for the Green Party a lot, okay? It's a pretty sort of hippie sort of town. And but the locals there that I'm speaking to, and I'm speaking to a lot of them, they want this mountain reopened. They want the local economy back in business. And, it's all in a stalemate right now. So the Minns government today was weak. That's the bottom line.
But John Ruddick, what is there... they've had 4 years to, sort this out. Well, collectively, the previous government and this government, 4 years to reach an opinion on it. What are they saying now? I mean, it's pretty simple. If you want to, I would have thought you identify a small area, not the whole mountain, and all right, fine, if that's sacred, leave that. But let people take their chance with whatever it is, a rainbow serpent striking them dead or whatever, or infertile. Let them take the chance. It's on you. Go up if you want, go down if you don't.
Well, look, the complication is all this, the Aboriginal industry, okay? And the left assume that there is all Aborigines are in agreement. They're like a big monolith on this subject. The truth is the Aborigines are just like all other communities, Andrew, very diverse, and there's a lot of internal politics. And half the Aborigines are saying, yeah, look, it is a sacred mountain. It's so sacred, we want all Australians to climb it and enjoy it. Okay, then, of course, other Aboriginal groups say, no, it's a sacred mountain, and therefore only Aboriginal men are allowed to climb it. And it's not even all Aboriginal men, it's only certain Aboriginal men of a certain tribe. So, look, if the Labor Party did the right thing here and exercised some common sense, it would be good for them politically. It's going to be good for them locally. And there's a lot of interest in this subject. And people will think, well, the Minns government, it's not Dan Andrews, it's a fairly centrist Labor government, like Bob Carr, there have been some reasonably good Labor premiers over the years. But they've just decided, look, why are they caving? Why are they so weak? Look, I just think that there's a powerful left-wing faction in the New South Wales Labor Party, and they just sort of think, we must go hard left on these Aboriginal issues.
John Ruddick, I actually think there's also, don't forget, the hard left wing of the media. I think they're also afraid of. Do not forget that in your calculations, but I'm sure you don't. John Ruddick, all strength to you. Keep fighting. Thank you so much. Now, after the break, I've just been given some amazing statistic surveys. When you actually see who publishes the books in this country, it's astonishing. It's astonishing. You might understand finally why so many Australian novels are so damn hopeless. I'll give you an example. Plus, more feral protests against Israel, including a disgusting attack on an academic with Jewish background. I mean, what ferals these are. Yeah, I'm still going to do my book of the week at the end of the show, but researching, I just came across statistics that are so astonishing, but they help to explain the great mystery. Why are so many Australian novels so terrible? I mean, so many read like lectures rather than entertainment. Not all, I've read some with pleasure, but not many. Why are publishers pushing on us books that are almost unreadable? Now, before I get to a book now claimed to be the great new Australian novel, oh dearie me, some figures reported this week by the trade magazine Books and Publishing. These are figures from a survey by the Australian Publishers Association. 84% of people working in publishing, deciding what to publish, are actually women. Extraordinary is that 21% of them are lesbian or gay or transgender, whatever. 35% say they have mental health conditions. 25% say they have long-term health conditions or a disability. And 85% have a uni degree. So I think you kind of get the picture, woke central, identity politics. Maybe I'm reading too much into them, but I don't think so. And it's not surprising, I think, from those figures that conservatives, and particularly men, aren't getting published. Now, well, not often. Now look at how many paid writers we have. In the last 35 years, the number of women authors has quadrupled. There are 4 times more of them. More than. But the number of paid male writers actually fell. Look at that. Absolute domination by women. 5 female writers now for every male one. And they're now complaining there's even less money to go around with this explosion in the number of writers, which is no surprise. But for all this extra writing going on, busy, and all the extra grants and prizes, what about the quality of the books? Well, last week, there was big news. Big literary award, the Stella Award for the best female writer. We can't have prizes like this going to men. Worth $60,000, had gone again, second time, to Alexis Wright for praised in the papers as perhaps the great Australian novel, the great Australian novel. Although it was suspicious, and please forgive me, when everyone seemed very keen to point out that Wright identified as Aboriginal, which she also stresses, by the way, and her novel was obsessed with global warming.
I was asking myself some really hard questions about global warming and also our situation as Aboriginal people, and our ability to work towards our own future. This has been an issue that we've had for a very long time, and we don't seem to be moving. Unabated global warming, it gets hotter and harder. It's already hard for a lot of our people on communities.
Which brave judge would have denied the richest female writer novelist prize to someone identifying as Aboriginal raving about global warming? You're a braver person than I am. Now, I've ploughed through some of the book, and I have to say it's virtually unreadable. There's no dialogue for chapter after chapter, just a long rant, global warming, how bad whites are. I'll give you a sample. Please don't turn off. You need to hear it to get... I'll start from the beginning. Oracle 1, speak, beginning with story. Once upon a time, for some people in the world, but not so plenteous, nor perfect for others, there lived a culture dreamer, obsessing about the era. He was no great dreamer, no greater than the rest of the juggernauts in his heartbroken, storm country people's humanity. This is the top female book. They knew just as much as he did about surviving on a daily basis and about how to make sacrifices of themselves in all the cataclysmic times generated by the mangy dogs who had stolen their traditional land. These people, after the generations of dealing with the land thief criminals, like many others around the world. I mean, seriously. This goes on, page after page after page. Now, I'm not surprised to find that this great Australian novel, the winner of a top prize last week, winner of lots of publicity from that, actually sold fewer than 500 copies in the shops last week. The public isn't buying this. Joining me is the panel, James McPherson, Louise Elliott, business consultant and Hobart City Council. James, of course, great host here on Sky News. James, the last Australian novel that you read and enjoyed?
Well, Andrew, I haven't read an Australian novel for a long time, and now I know why, but I've actually got with me the last Australian author I read. You might have heard of this. It's a book by Andrew Bolt, a wonderful read, still available in bookstores. I would highly recommend it to everybody. But I went on to Amazon.com to check out the book, which won the Stellar Literary Award, and the reviews were most enlightening. People gave it 5 stars, but wrote in the review, a difficult read, which I think you just proved that it is. But even more difficult than reading the book is understanding the Stellar Literary Awards. It's true they're for female writers, but Andrew, that's only the half of it. It's for female and non-binary writers, which is confusing in itself.
Apologies, I should have been more specific. How could I ignore such a rich category of writing? Louise, your last Australian novel that you enjoyed?
I'm in the same camp. I can't name one off the top of my head, and I'm glad that James picked up what I did as well, because a man could have won that if he felt non-binary at the time. So let's be honest in terms of the eligibility there. But no, I can't name one of those novels. For me, at the moment, I'm much more interested in the non-fiction, and I'm soaking up all I can in terms of the likes of Douglas Murray's entire back catalogue. In saying that, there's a couple of lesbian writers that I'm very keen to get a hold of their works. Kathleen Stock and Holly Lawford-Smith, for example, not because they're lesbian, but because I genuinely care what they have to say and I'm interested in their arguments. That's what publishing and work should be all about. It should be all about being entertained and informed, not pricking up to see how much virtue signalling value you can get out of a particular a title.
Well, I better match and say Gary Dish's crime novels. I recommended them the other day. Simon Lee's one of the great writers Australia's ever produced. Well, in fact, Belgium, but he came here. But I don't think I've read a serious, novel with pleasure made by an Australian since Murray Bale. I mean, I wish Murray had written more. Eucalyptus and people. Anyway, talking about the slide into barbarity, James, these anti-Israel protests. I mean, they seem to be appealing to the worst Australians, to be honest. Now it's trouble at Queensland University. Protesters storming the engineering building, breaking a window. One even urinated in the office of an academic with Jewish ancestry. Now, how do you explain that and how people doing that can still claim to be the moral Australians?
It's a really interesting thing, isn't it, Andrew? And I've thought a lot about this because Jew hatred seems to be unlike any other bigotry. It's like a sickness that literally drives people mad. And I could give you the pat answer, but let me tell you what I really think. And whether you believe this or not, I believe it's the only explanation. The Jewish myth is that they introduced God to the world. Moses gave the 10 Commandments. Jesus showed us what God is like. And so the only way I can understand this rabid hatred towards the Jews, which, as I said, there's a lot of bigotry around the world, but none like the bigotry towards the Jewish people, I think it can only be explained as a rejection and a rebellion, not against Jews, but against God himself. And that would be enough to drive the kind of insanity and to explain the inexplicable that we're seeing, not just in this country, but around the world right now.
Yes, you might be onto something there. The great Jewish journalist Joseph Roth once said that Hitler's problem, a war against the Jews was not because the Jews had killed Christ, but they had given birth to Christ. So there you are, you're on the same page as him. Louise Elliott, how do you explain people acting so badly and thinking themselves so good?
I can't explain it. All I can feel is kind of nauseated at the thought that somebody would actually think that that was a smart or constructive move, especially with the Jewish academics office. It's reached the point where it's absolutely enough is enough. They are the most vile toddlers that just keep pushing these boundaries, and no one is pushing back on them. They're just being able to get away with things, again, because I genuinely think it comes out of fear. I think a lot of people, with the police, the politicians, a lot of people are fearful of what these mobs can do because they have none of the normal filters or boundaries that sane Australians do, so they keep pushing. But enough is enough, and it's really sad. I'm really sad about that this is happening in our own country.
Look, time for the adults to stand up and give leadership. And I'm looking at Albanese. Well, I would be looking at Albanese if he was standing in front of me. I'm looking particularly to him for that. Honestly, Louise Elliott, James McPherson, thank you both for your time. After the break, we have this crisis with China right now. And where is the Foreign Minister, do you think? She's off staring at the sea with flowers in her hair, looking for a climate crisis in the Pacific that doesn't exist, instead of dealing with one that does right here. I said at the top of the show, this government seems completely headless, no sense of direction, and so weak on China as well. An extraordinary example. Yeah, I've checked again, every day I do this. Foreign Minister Penny Wong has still not said one word in public about China attacking one of our Navy helicopters with flares. Not a single word in public. So what is she up to instead, you may well ask? What's her priority? Well, today she put flowers in her hair and she went to Tuvalu to look at the sea levels there very closely in what she's calling a global warming crisis. I think she's trying to measure whether the sea's gone up and down. She's tweeted that she's handed over $38 million of our money for this crisis that she apparently detects. But what she doesn't say is that study after study, as recently as 3 years ago, shows Tuvalu is actually growing in size, not sinking at all. Fake crisis. So here's Wong staring at the sea. That's apparently for her more urgent than staring down China. But I have to say there's another sign that the government is now suddenly all confused about how green it should actually be. The Prime Minister this week refused to commit to releasing the full details of something Labor's been promising for years now. Its big plan called Nature Positive. That's a plan to make sure that whatever we develop, we're actually going to leave nature in even better shape, which sounds to be ominous, and also do even more to protect Aboriginal cultural heritage. Joining me is the opposition's environment spokesman, Jonathan Dunningham. Jonathan, great to see you again. No details still from the government. What's going on, do you think?
Well, Andrew, g'day from a very wet Tasmania, and Tim Flannery must be incredibly relieved that our dams are starting to fill with all of this rain. But I've never known governments to hide good things. They only hide bad things. The fact that we were told by Tanya Plibersek and Anthony Albanese at the last election that we didn't have a minute to spare. We had to save the world through new environmental laws, and that terrible coalition government had left us in such a bad state. Well, we were supposed to have the laws in Parliament by the end of last year. The consultation process hasn't even finished. Not a skerrick of legislation has been drafted. So it puts paid to this urgent nature of what they were planning to do. But I think the real problem here for Labor is you've got a minister in an inner city seat where she's fighting off the Greens to hang on to her seat in Parliament. She wants to do everything she can to stop job-creating projects that drive our economy, but then she's got other people in her own party group, her own caucus, who are begging her to do the right thing by the economy, and she knows common sense prevails. So she's caught between the left and the right of her own party, and that's why they haven't progressed these laws, because they know they cannot please everyone.
And of course, they'd like to spring them after the election when it's too late to object. But Jonathan Dunningham, I got to say, whenever I hear, you've said this a number of times, where's the plans? Bring it on, bring it on. And I'm thinking, no, don't, because I'd rather they stayed in the cupboard, to be honest. What's your attitude here? What's your big plan?
Well, we've got to go back to basics. I mean, for goodness sake, government gets involved in too much, the federal government in particular. I think states and territories, generally speaking, as far as one can trust a government, know best what to do in their own jurisdiction. But we've got to get some common sense injected back into these laws. We've got to restrict the time it takes for projects to be approved. We've got to restrict third-party standing, in my view, so some cashed-up activist in Sydney can't stop a project going ahead in remote Western Australia. We've got to be able to provide certainty to investors so they can create jobs in our community and dig up the minerals we need to build the things we need to build and generate the energy we need to generate. They're the things that we'll be looking to do. It's pretty simple. It's not a rocket science, and we'll work with industry and we'll work with the community to make sure we do it. But Labor seem unable after 2 years to be able to do this. And I think it's a shame on them. And the environment movement are castigating them as well, which I think proves they have lost their way.
Yeah, but I don't know if you want to be on the same side as the Greens on this one. But just quickly, Jonathan Dunn, more cultural heritage laws are actually part of this. It's not just nature positive, right? That's what Plibersek also wants. Tanya Plibersek, the Environment Minister. When we're already getting non-Aboriginal Australians locked out from some popular tourism sites, as we discussed earlier, and even potentially Lake Eyre. I mean, golly, do we really need more of these cultural heritage laws?
No, Andrew, we don't. What an outrage. What kind of a country are we living in where we are isolating certain parts of our country for people who have a specific racial or ethnic background? In some cases, I know it's based on gender too. There are some culturally sensitive sites where only men can go to in Aboriginal cultures. Look, I honestly think this is a bad move. We saw what happened in Western Australia when they brought in their WA cultural heritage laws, which were a disaster, and they had to repeal. I reckon, and this is the same as the Nature Positive Plan, they're going to hold it off till after the election. They may well be in partnership with the Greens in a hung parliament. It will be worse than we thought it ever would be, and this is what we need to drive to in the lead up to the election.
Well, now I'm starting to see why it really needs to be out in the open now, not in the witch's brew that we're probably going to get after the election. Jonathan Dunningham, thank you so much for that. Thank you for the rain report too. My brother will be pleased since he's chairman of your dams down there. After the break, Britain faces a challenge from radical Muslim politicians while its confused Eurovision Song Contest entrance wears a Union Jack bikini, at the same time claiming the Union Jack is too divisive. No wonder the country's in a mess. Plus my book of the week, my book for Mother's Day. I mean, Western society, so including Britain here, whatever, the national symbols under attack, shame, shame, shame. Take in Britain. Ollie Alexander, he's representing Britain in the Eurovision Song Contest. He's actually posed in a Union Jack bra. I mean, seriously. And then still says, oh, look, I'm actually ambivalent about this flag because it can be divisive and it can be nationalistic. I mean, seriously. Joining me is Patrick Christys, star host of GB News, joining me from London. Patrick, how's that going down?
Well, I've decided not to wear a Union Jack bra for you today, Andrew. I'll just keep that for the privacy of my own home. But absolutely astonishing stuff from our Eurovision contestant here saying that he seems to be a bit confused in more ways than one. He's been very pro-Palestine, the Palestinian flag in recent times. He's not had a problem wearing that or draping himself in it, but not our own. He had to point out, like everybody now of a certain age in this country, they have to point out that our flag can have nationalist connotations. Can I just remind him, this is a competition that's defined by countries, which are defined by borders, which are defined by their flag. Okay, so by necessity, we have to have a flag. This country has allowed him to make millions, be exactly who he wants to be, have a glittering singing and acting career. But having heard him sing, Andrew, I don't think it's him who should be ashamed of our flag. I think it's us who should be ashamed of his voice. It just sounds like a cat in a sack.
Look, of course a flag is divisive. It's dividing Britain from the rest of the world. It's distinct. You celebrate it. If he flies a Palestinian flag, equally divisive. In fact, probably more so. Honestly, but while you're having that right, Patrick, this whole confusion and shame about, oh my gosh, the British flag, at the same time, you've got people who are not embarrassed at all about their culture, and they're not talking about necessarily the British culture. You've got that councillor in Leeds who won and said, surrounded by people yelling Allahu Akbar, we've done this for Gaza, not for the people of Leeds. We've won for Gaza, and now you've got a group called the Muslim Vote, backed by 24 groups, issuing the Labor Party with a list of 18 demands to gain Muslim support at the election, including recognising Palestine as a state. Where's Britain in this? Putting travel bans on all Israeli politicians supporting this war. What's going on here?
Yeah, so we had the local elections in England, not that you would know it. Islamic politics has emerged from the shadows of quite shady Sharia courts or the back rooms of mosques, where it has been for decades, really. And it's now in council halls across the country, and quite possibly very soon to be in the Houses of Parliament that you can see a picture of behind me here. People have infiltrated parties like, bizarrely, the Green Party. Okay, so this guy who shouted Allahu Akbar after he won was a member of the Green Party. I would love to hear his views on net zero, but because they're on the left, they get away with it. There was no vetting process. The elections, the local elections, should have all been about sorting out, potholes, taking out trash cans, and it's turned out to be all about Gaza. The list of 18 demands: Sharia pensions, refusing to arm Israel, Muslim pupils must have prayer rooms in schools. It is the political Islam is here to stay. But the Labour Party has managed to get rid of these people. They're now outside the tent. Their response was, we need to win these people back. No, you don't. Just wave them off. Let them go and be fruitcake somewhere else.
No, I know, but I want to know where Ollie Alexander is on this. I mean, since he's a spokesman for British values, maybe he should say what he thinks about divisive politics, but I suspect he'll keep stum on that one. Meanwhile, Prince Harry and his father are snubbed again. I think he's about 3 miles from his where his father is living at the moment in London, the King. But the King won't see him on this on this week. This seems to be a very serious snub.
It is a serious snub, actually. Now, Prince Harry released a statement which was the kind of usual passive-aggressive statement that you would get from the want-away prince, saying, he understands that his father has a busy schedule and also, quotes, other priorities. What we think is going on is that King Charles is reluctant to meet Harry without Camilla in the room, and Prince Harry is reluctant to meet King Charles with Camilla in the room, and so we end up with this ridiculous situation. There was a double snub, though. So the royals didn't send any representation to St. Paul's Cathedral, where Harry was having his Invictus Games anniversary. And wait for the triple whammy, Andrew. He decided to make Prince William the colonel of Prince Harry's old regiment, whilst Harry was in the UK. So that is quite a strong statement, isn't it, really? Look, Prince Harry could have made a lot more time for his father. I think, if you and I found out that our dad had cancer, we'd have probably seen him more than once in the last year. We'd have probably come a little bit earlier, flown in and maybe quarantined if his immune system is low, and spent a bit of time with him. Clearly, there is no olive branch there, and you just can't trust him anyway. So what will be the point of King Charles, in his hours of need, having a conversation with Harry that then ends up on Netflix? You just don't want it, do you?
That's exactly correct. He just can't be trusted. However it might break the King's heart, how can you trust him? You can't. Patrick Christys, always great to talk to you. Thanks for your time. Talk to you next week. Now, take it from me, my book of the week, which is red. That's about all you can see. It's actually Pride and Prejudice by Jane Austen. It's from Mother's Day. One of the most, women can write, one of the most funny, sharply observed, beautiful books. I love it. Do your mother a favour. Pride and Prejudice, as always, goes to the Robinson's Books. The website, you can see my recommendations on the left side of the page, and they'll look after you there very well. And the funny thing, I've made it a matching, my whiskey of the week is Cotswolds whiskey. From the Cotswolds, actually in England. Jane Austen used to visit a nephew, a cousin or something that was in the Cotswolds. It wasn't far from Bath, where she worked and lived for many years. And it's actually nice. It's very fruity, like berries. You can imagine the delicate hand of Jane Austen, or one of her heroines, picking the berries that somehow infused this lovely whiskey. A gift from my son, actually. So, yes, I recommend it. But Pride and Prejudice, one of the great novels. That's it from me. Coming up next is Sharry Markson. Good night.